All right, thank you. All right, I call this meeting to order. We will stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to
to
the
the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Review of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yep.
All right, do we have a motion? All right, and can we, when we second tonight, does anybody, can you please raise your hand when you second so Phyllis can get it for record? It's hard to tell with the masks on. She can't read whose lips are going.
Right, Pete?
Uh,
Pete, did you second?
Yeah, sure I did.
Okay.
I guess I did now. Anyway.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
All right.
All right, that's unanimous, Phyllis. Okay, communications. So manifest documents are going around. No nominations or resignations?
None.
Okay, so superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. I have a brief report this evening. I just wanted to mention that I had spent a large part of today meeting with staff. I met with our wonderful Bakey staff that works in special education as a follow-up meeting to my meeting on March 12th. They continue to struggle with coverage in the pandemic, and we are working as an administrative team to support the special education staff at Bakey. As teachers come back from leave, when we look toward May 3rd, we are transitioning some staff toward Bakey to help them out. We've been moving subs to Bakey as they're available, and I particularly brought this up because they could not express enough the gratitude that they felt for the board agreeing to put a special education coordinator at Bakey. So I just wanted to tell you that that made a big impact on morale, and you could literally see them feeling like, we really need this. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to share that with the board to thank you for making that decision. I think it was the right decision. I also met with the math teachers at the high school today and had a very, very positive conversation with them about they are very anxious to have a conversation with Dr. Haynes, similar to the K-6 conversation about a scope and sequence for math at the high school. And they are very interested in, I was surprised. They said if they can get it together to figure out a text or a process, a curriculum to start in the fall, they want to go there. So Patty's meeting with them next week. And then I told them Jamie Fitzpatrick would pay for it. So they were happy to hear that. They appreciated that support from Mr. Fitzpatrick and his math ambitions. No, I did tell them that if we have to cobble money from the high school budget and my budget to figure it out, if they're ready to go and willing to go, we're going to support them. So we'll see what they do because it's a big process to pick something, but they have been looking at a few different programs already because they really feel like they need a more codified scope and sequence that fits a more traditional algebra 1, algebra 2, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2 sequence. And they are very excited to work on that. So I'll have more to report in a few weeks. So I was very happy to hear that they were positive about that. In addition to that, I have some information about sports that I'll share later on in the agenda. And I think that, we are really looking forward to May 3rd. So this is our last board meeting before the students come back. And we are bringing back a lot of students, over 100 students. Bakey will have roughly 10 students that are remote at that point. So on May 3rd, we'll have only about 10. The middle school will have between 30 and 40 at the top and 20 at the lower end. They're still working on a few issues there. And the high school will have about 42 to 50 students remote at that point. At one point, we had been in the 25% range. So we're doing phenomenal. It really couldn't be going better. The feedback that I've received is that parents appreciated that the district said, you need to come back to school unless you have a medical condition, because there were a lot of students that were hedging. And when they heard that they didn't really have a choice, they were like, all right, I'll go. And myself, having a seventh grader who went back to school 4 days a week for the first time last week, I can't express the change in my own son's body language and energy. He was just a different kid once he went to school. Our kids need to go to school. And so I'm so grateful that the board has been so supportive this year and us being 5 days a week. And I can't thank our teachers enough for everything that they've done to make this happen. It is hard. And I'm really grateful. I mean, our staff at Bakey in particular today, I could see the exhaustion. The special ed staff at Bakey is very tired and they have worked very, very hard. And I have nothing to say except thank you. It's amazing. So we have, after break, we have 6 more weeks to go. And we're going to make it. But the more help we can send Bakey's way, if folks in the community are available to substitute teach, if your kids come home from college and they need a job for a month, we'd love to have them substitute teach. Just have them call Diana Rooney or email her at drooney, ROONEY, at sau17.net. We still have a need for subs because some of our subs are college students who have gone back to full in-person school that were remote before and were subbing during the day and then doing their college work at night. So we've had some subs that we've lost to colleges going back to fully in person, which is awesome for the colleges, but harder for us. So for this evening, that concludes my superintendent's report. I will talk about sports for Mr. Dawson. Yes.
Got a question about,
Yep.
question about the report. As far as the math part goes, that's great that they want to jump on that.
Mhm.
So in the ISA meeting that I watched, there was a report that there's a lot of free information, a lot of free curriculum and programs
Mhm.
available on the internet for improving math.
Mhm.
Will they be getting a list of those and looking at that as well?
I can't give you any more of an update. Of course, we'll look at any free resources that are available, but I think that the consensus, honestly, they've been poking around independently, not even with administrative directive, which is pretty impressive. They're really curious about the Envision program that K6 just adopted.
Okay.
So they want to know more about how does that work for 7 through 11
Yeah.
or 7 through 10th. So I told them, also Mr. Rocher, who will be moving to the ELA coordinating position for the fall from the middle school principalship, is really had a lot of experience with the Envision math program at the upper levels.
Oh, great.
So I don't want to say that, of course, we'll use any free resources
Yeah, yeah.
available, but I certainly would support if I feel like we have a curriculum issue with regard to the scope and sequence. I don't know yet what the group will find as they look at the different materials as to what they're going to recommend. I just told them that I was really happy that they are on fire about
Yeah,
it.
that's
They were like,
great.
we want to dig in too, and we want to do this too.
That's great.
So I'm going to let Patty do her magic that she's done with the other groups. Mr. Malila will be helping her with that. And we are really looking forward to hearing what they come up with. There are some free resources that I want them to explore regardless of the program, because as we discussed before, no program is perfect.
Thanks.
So just a question, I might have missed it. You gave a list of who's still remote at the schools, but I didn't pick up Memorial.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Memorial, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but I think it's in the less than 4 or 5 range. It's very, very small. Yeah. Bakey had about 10. I would say there's a handful of kids at the lower level schools, and 2 handfuls at the middle school and 4 at the high school. It's shifting, because what's happening is as the kids are coming back, they're talking about it, and other kids are like, I want to go back too. Right. So it's catching positive momentum. And I do want to just quickly say, as you know, I've spoken to a lot of folks about this. We still are not seeing any evidence of transmission of COVID at school. It is happening outside of school. Please wear your masks. Please socially distance. We're almost there. We're talking about 7 weeks. Thank you for everything that everyone's doing.
Okay. Committee reports. Does anyone have a committee report?
I don't have a report per se, but Matt, would you be available next Wednesday for finance?
Sure.
All right, so then why don't we go ahead and have a public meeting? Can you guys make next Wednesday?
Did you get the schedule that we just got?
Yeah, but it's not on there.
Oh, it's not? Oh, next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday is the 21st.
Oh, yeah.
Or does that work for you?
Yeah, at 4:30.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can do that.
Great.
okay.
Meeting in middle school room 121. I'll email you that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
We also have a facilities meeting scheduled for May 11th, and that's at 3:30 PM.
Is that going to be Zoom?
No, that'll be live.
Where?
Will it be in room?
Yeah, thanks. I'll just clarify this. We have 2 rooms in the building that we can use. So one Wednesday, we will assign some folks to 121, and another one is
42.
For clarification purposes, Dan was telling me we can only stream one meeting at a time.
Yep.
So we can't really have. do you wanna have
If they're
one-
live and in person, we don't have to stream them.
Oh, okay.
We can just record them and then post them. Yep. So we will send you room assignments for those meetings, but they'll be in the high school, one in the middle school and one in the high school wing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Personnel did meet today. We had our first meeting. Not ready to report out on that yet, but we did meet today. Mr. Baker and Mr. Broderick lovingly nominated me as chair. So, thank you, gentlemen. But I'll report out at our next meeting on that. And I was trying to look, and it looks like, so just to put out there the next subcommittee meetings, Tuesday, May 11th, we have facilities at 3:30, public relations at 4:30, and policy at 5 o'clock. Right.
And then can I ask a clarification question? So we're supposed to have the meeting with Fremont immediately after. Would we still be meeting in person that day?
That's right. It did say Zoom.
Yeah, Fremont will be Zoom, so we can meet in person and Zoom with them from here.
Okay.
I just thought that's what we would do because it's kind of, that way if we have anything that we need to cover as a board on our own agenda, we'll have that available. Because the Fremont meeting is part of it, but we also sometimes have our own agenda items. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Is that on the 11th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it's Tuesday, the 11th instead of the 12th.
Yeah.
All right. Jake, you're up.
All right. I think some of you might have seen on your way in here, Penny Wars has begun and each grade has their own jar. So go seniors. Good luck, everybody else, though. National Honor Society welcomed its new members this past Monday, and new faces will be joining what has been a great group in Sanborn for a long time. Spring Carnival will be next Friday, April 23rd. It will be a safe and fun event for every grade, all staff, and all students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. First public comment. We have so many people here. All right. We move
You know.
on to new business. I know we have to wait on the public hearings. We have to wait until 6:30, so we have a little over 15 minutes. So do we want to move to 7.2? Do you want to talk
Sure.
to that? All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I did send the school board a memo. We put in a proposal for June 16th to be the last day of for students. We also included in that memo a proposal that we have sent to the union for consideration, that if our staff have leftover personal days, instead of taking them during the school year while students are in school, considering how tight our staffing is, that if they would like to take them at the end of the year, we'll approve those, which is an allowable exception in the teacher's contract. So I can approve personal days to extend a vacation, but I have to do them manually. So I'm asking you as a board, would you be willing to accept the proposal that I shared with you, or Patty shared with you, allowing the teachers to use their personal days at the end of the year? What we normally have happen is in April and May, we have a tremendous number of personal days get taken to use them up because they expire and they don't carry from year to year. We're trying to encourage staff not to use them during April and May because we're having such tight staffing numbers. So we're asking them to take them at the end of the year. And if they've already taken their personal days, then we will have them do independent professional development that's been pre-approved by Dr. Haynes and the administrative team.
I am very opposed to this.
Okay.
Personal days are supposed to be for when people have something come up that's a
Right.
personal purpose, they do it. If we're going to be in a situation where we can't blanche say, hey, take your personal days, I think that sets an awful precedent. If they happen to have something personal come up those last few days, well, that happens. But for us to sit here and say, hey, take your personal days at the end, when the whole intent of those was, we all have things that come up during the year that we need a personal day to take. And by rule, I believe, we can't even ask them, what's the personal purpose? It's personal. So I'm not sure we want to go down the road of sanctioning, take them the last 2 days. Up to you folks, but I'm not comfortable doing that. If they happen to have personal days those last 2 days, well, you know, we can't even ask them why. But I would leave that alone. I really wouldn't touch that one.
So I'll respond to that. And typically, Pete, I agree with you about these things, especially where you have been in the role of being a union president in the past. You understand the complexities of personal days and the way these contracts work. So I just want to say, in all fairness, I understand exactly what you're saying. We are in an unprecedented time, and people are not taking their personal days because they feel so bad about not being there. People would come in more sick if the COVID rules would let them, because they don't want their colleagues to be shorthanded because we're so tight on staff. So I think it's a very unusual year. And in a normal school year, Mr. Broderick, I would agree with you 100%. I would never propose this. And I do not think that this is the way that this would be handled typically, but I just want to be clear with everyone. If people are faced with, we cannot ask staff whether or not, or what the purpose is of their personal day. And if we don't allow them to take them at the end of the year, by contract, they're not allowed to take them at the end of the year. So the teacher's contract says that you cannot use a personal day to extend a vacation. So if the last day of school before summer vacation, you want to use your personal day, I can't do that without your approval.
But
Right.
that's not a vacation day. Vacation is the weeks that we set up. I'm only trying to give you I was grievance chairman of the union when I granted this as special. I understand that. But boy, the battles I fought over that.
Mhm.
My suggestion would be, let a sleeping dog lie. And what you do as superintendent, if somebody says, I want to take a personal day, that's your business. I'm just saying, even under these extraordinary circumstances, because next year could be another extraordinary circumstance or another.
Yeah.
I'm just counseling to leave it alone, let him run his school.
Well, no, that's fine, but I'm telling you that I can't do, I am asking the board to support the proposal.
Okay.
If you don't support the proposal, then we're going to have a ton of people take personal days in April and May, and we can't ask them what they're for. And we're going to be short-staffed to the point where my son's school is closed on Thursday because they have so many people absent. I'm worried about that. I'm saying that this is a stopgap to try to prevent that from happening, and the union has agreed to this as a one-time exception. So I sent this to the union and asked them what they thought, and they agreed to it as a one-time exception because they recognize that their own membership is struggling just to get through the year with the limited amount of coverage that we have. So Pete, I understand everything you're saying. I just,
Right or wrong here. I'm
It's a
just
tough
telling
one.
you my experience, and
Yep.
vote whichever way you, like normal with me, vote whatever way you want.
sure.
Okay. Do we have a motion so we can continue discussion, or?
Motion for discussion?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Well, wait a minute. Jamie has a question.
Okay.
Jamie, you
Statement.
got.
Yeah, so I agree with Pete's comments about precedent. I'm very concerned about precedent. I don't want to be setting precedent. So I think that we should be very clearly stating that this is COVID related, and we sweep it under the rug of COVID.
Right.
Because I am also concerned of, we need to keep the kids in school. And if this is going to somehow impede our ability to do so, then I'd want to support it. But I also want to make it very clear that we're not setting a precedent. Because
Maybe we can change that motion, say COVID related, and I'll even support that one.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
Yep. Non-precedent setting, COVID related
Yeah.
is the way to say it.
It can come back to bite us. That's-
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that, Peter.
All right, so do we have,
Could someone make that motion just because it got a little convoluted for
I
Phyllis?
think you have to kill the first motion.
I think it was just a motion to discuss.
Okay.
That first
Yeah.
motion.
Thank you,
So we
Maura.
need an actual
So then
motion.
I make a motion to approve the proposal as written, as an exception due to COVID, without regard, well, not without regard, and not setting any precedent for this
Action.
Yeah, for the, what do you call these? Unprecedented times. I mean, I just want it very clear that this is associated with, it's only because it's COVID in the situation we're in. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, no, I get, it. One thing,
Hold on,
I don't
Pete.
mean to
We just-
pontificate, but
So we need a
Second.
second.
Yeah,
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy. All right.
let me just say this,
Discussion.
because we have new members and I'm sure they already know this, but I was a teacher. What can I say? Decisions we make today tie future boards.
Yep.
Very important. We bring that into consideration so that if we were to not word it the way you just did, it could come back to bite us big time. But I think you definitely said one time,
Yeah.
because past practices under union, the past practices, you will let us do it.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. There's all kinds of convolutions here that,
I'm just making, I think too, though, it could also completely agree with what you guys are saying. It can also flip to the other side for the teachers as well of, well, you guys didn't need those you guys didn't need those personal days last year, so why should we have them again? I have a family member who's a teacher in a union, and
Yep.
I think there was one year we had a lot of snow days, and they were off on Good Friday, and they wanted to go to school on Good Friday to make up days, and she was like very big on, it's a precedent if we give it this year. So I think
Yep,
the reverse could happen too for the teachers, because they could be afraid that we could come back and say, well, you didn't need them in the 2020-21 school year, so why do you need personal days? So,
but you see
but
that.
I agree, I completely agree with the motion that it should be.
Absolutely agree with you.
So-
And now I'm back to, they have smart people on their side. We have smart people on our side. We hope we make fewer mistakes than they do. It's a friendly adversarial relationship usually.
All right. Anyone else?
I had a quick, I just wrote down this just to clarify the motion. If you'd be willing to amend your motion just to make it a little more clear. No, did I say amend his emotion? Sorry. Amend your motion to make it a little more clear. It would say, approve the plan as proposed with an understanding that it is non-precedent setting due to COVID.
There we go.
That's the language for the union.
How about approve it due to COVID with the understanding it's non-precedent?
That's fine too. Same
You can
purpose.
go that you have. That's what I
Okay.
was trying to say anyway. So
So,
I'm fine with that adjustment.
okay, thanks.
All right. And then, so now we need so you've amended your motion.
Yeah.
Now do we need to?
I'll second it.
Second?
Thank you.
I just.
Tammy,
wanted
second.
Tammy
it.
seconded.
Amend my.
So okay. So Tammy will amend her second.
What did I start?
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you, everyone. Our kids appreciate that because I really think it's going to cut down on the number of unnecessary staff absences in May and June.
And just to clarify for anybody, I don't know if we said it or not, did we say that June 16th is the last day for students?
That was the proposal, which Jamie did.
Did he read that? I couldn't.
He just said he accepted the proposal as written, which included June 16th.
But it's good to state
Yes,
it
but
out
I don't know
loud.
if we said it out loud.
Yeah, I don't
Thanks.
remember.
Watching the meeting, we'll now
Thank you,
know
Dawn.
that it's officially last day of school for kids is set.
Let's just do this cleaner. Could someone make a motion to approve the June 16th as the last day of school and do the process for that, just so it's clear?
I make a motion to approve June 16th as the last day of school.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
All right.
All right, unanimous.
Okay.
Great, thank you, everyone. Okay, Matt.
Can I recommend we go to 7-4?
I'm sorry, what?
7-4?
Well, we have 7-3 as
We
well.
have 7-3.
Well, I didn't know how long that
We
would
have
take
5
because we might
minutes.
discuss on that one, but I figured 7-4, we
The
do that.
athletics update.
Oh, you know what? We'll skip down to 8-1 and Tom will do the athletics update and then we'll be sure we can come
Will
back.
it
at
take less than
6:30.
5 minutes?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I have a very brief update from Mr. Dawson. Should bring us right into home plate here. Pun intended. High school teams began playing games this week, with softball picking up a win yesterday and girls tennis losing to a perennial contender for the state title. Baseball and boys tennis open up their seasons today. Middle school teams begin games tomorrow afternoon, and we have roughly 180 athletes participating in spring sports, grades 7 to 12. 180 kids. That's awesome. I'm realizing I actually need my glasses full time now. Like, whoa. Under COVID, Mr. Dawson noted that the weekly case tracking chart is on page 2 of this document for you. One team was recently quarantined as a whole due to a positive test within that team. They'll miss one game, which is unlikely to be made up. The teams at both levels this spring will be following the NHIAA considerations for sports, which pretty much requires masking at all times other than while participating in pole vault, discus, javelin, and hurdles. Those exceptions were built in for safety reasons. Overall, things are moving forward very smoothly with our spring sports, and glad the kids are playing in outdoors. It's great.
Well, that was too fast. Now we have a little more time to go.
We can do 7.1.3, the acceptance of tents. That doesn't need a public hearing.
Okay, great.
Great. Okay, perfect. So we're going to move to that. Matt.
Okay, so the acceptance of tents for the athletic teams from the Sanborn boosters. Basically, the tents double the size and are heavy duty and are also logoed. There's 2 of them that were designed for the track team, but will be used in during weather for the other teams. Okay, so basically, Sanborn boosters gave us these tents for usage, and we're hoping that you accept them.
Move to accept.
Second.
All right, that was Heather on the second.
Oh, yeah.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
All right.
All right, unanimous.
Thank you.
Still got 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, man,
Okay,
guys, we're
Do you
moving
want me
too
to do
quick.
the other grant?
Yeah, the other one that doesn't require public.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm asking the school board to accept the Consolidated Communication Grant for the high school for $2,500. Actually, at the next board meeting, you're going to see one for $1,000 for Bakey. The grant was chased down by Devin Helmke, a teacher in the high school. In his words, the funds will be used for the Connecting Sanborn to the Internet of Things project, which seeks to engage high school students in the project-based curriculum centered on growing Internet of Things. Students in the Explorations in STEM course, estimated at 30 students, will learn the ins and outs of internet-connected devices through the series of hands-on lessons. As a final project, students will identify problems on their in their own lives and implement solutions using Wi-Fi-enabled microcontrollers. Along the way, students will gain 21st century skills, including program, circuitry, and creative problem solving as they use internet-connected devices to design innovative solutions in real-world problems. Okay.
Move to accept.
Second.
Heather?
Question.
Yes.
So this grant is to facilitate those additional studies, but there's no cost to the district as far as additional
That's correct.
bandwidth or internet or any of that.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, unanimous?
You,
Great. Thank you.
Devin.
Yeah, thank you, Devin.
Thank you. Yes. All right, 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds.
I think we're okay.
Close enough? Okay.
That
so-
clock's slow.
So Jody, public hearing to accept System of Care grant.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm Jody Gutterman, Director of Student Services. This is Mrs. Heidi Levitt, Director of School Counseling. And we are very excited to be here this evening to give you some information and ask for your support and your acceptance of this competitive award that we applied to and received recently. So the state refers to this grant as the System of Care grant. The technical name is the SAMHSA Expansion and Sustainability Cooperative Agreements. SAMHSA stands for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. It is funded and is funded by different agencies, and there are 5 different agencies involved in the process, which are the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, SAMHSA, Center for Mental Health Services, the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness within the Bureau of Student Wellness at the New Hampshire Department of Education. Essentially, what we're asking for is acceptance of an award that will allow us to help bridge the gap between families and students for social emotional learning and mental health. We're very passionate about this, and we're hoping that you guys will move forward with this. some details of it. It is a 4-year grant. We're currently in year 1. Due to unprecedented times, which I know we keep talking about, but due to the nature of that, the state has been delayed in the process. So this is an August to August award, and we're already in year 1. So they're going to essentially allow us additional funding for years 2, 3, and 4. So every year we're allowed $250,000 to support this initiative. The requirement, the first step is to hire a project manager. That project manager has to be a SAU level administrator, and it's a year-round position. That person then kind of oversees the initiative of the program and kind of develops a plan. So Mrs. Levin and I are hoping that after this acceptance, if you decide to accept this award, that we could then post for that position and hire that person to then develop a plan moving forward for the district. Our hope is that we would be able to, in addition to that position, hire a full-time social worker for the district to help families and students. And in addition, perhaps hire a part-time social worker and then also provide some professional development opportunities. There is a match requirement to this grant award that I want you to all be aware of. So the second year you have to match. The district has to match 25%, the third year 50%, and the fourth year 75%. So it's 25, 50, and 75% in increments. This does not have to be cash contributions. This can all be in-kind contributions, which means that we can use partial salaries for myself and Mrs. Levitt. We can use salaries for other individuals working to support this position and this initiative. We can use facility funds for office space of the individual that will be the project manager or social workers. Professional development costs that are incurred for the presenter, the training itself, as well as potentially the salaries of staff partaking in the trainings. Those are just some examples, but we feel confident that we can easily get to the match with all in-kind contributions. The state's goal and hope is that this is a sustainable grant and that within those 4 years, the district chooses to move in the direction and maintain these positions. But again, that's a conversation for another time, but it can all be done in kind, or we could also match some of it with cash depending on the direction of the school board. Heidi's going to give a little bit of information on the benefits of this award.
Hi, folks. So as we've presented before to this board, we typically do a survey for our students. It's called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and we look at some of the things that our students are dealing with. So the levels of depression, the levels of mental illness that our kids are experiencing in their own lives and in the lives of their families. And I just have some of those statistics here. So we have about 30, and this is just done at the high school. When we surveyed our kids 2 years ago, about 35% of our students indicated that they were dealing with some level of depression. About 5% of them were dealing with some level of homelessness, whether they had been kicked out, they had been abandoned, they had run away. 6% of our students were dealing with a family member who had been incarcerated. And another 17% of our students had witnessed violence in their home. As you can imagine, students who are dealing with some of these issues are coming to school not in the best place for learning. And as a counseling team, we certainly can support them, but if we could have the social worker to kind of help bridge the school and the family to help the families access services that are in the community. So sometimes it can be intimidating to go into a mental health center and sign up for mental health counseling. If you have a school member who's worked to help you and gain that trust with you and help you navigate those systems, that can be really helpful to have the student then access those services. So we would also be able to, with the social workers, be able to provide group counseling. So if you think about a student who's dealing with a family member with substance abuse, about 30% of our students are dealing with a family member who has substance abuse issues in their home. Talking about that at school and then going back to math class is not real ideal. If we could have a social worker who's here providing some group support after school for our kids, that would be ideal for those students to be able to have the support that they need, but also be able to still perform at the level that they need to in school. So I think just being able to access those services through the social worker would be incredible for our kids. And then having someone who can look at our district and all of the places that we're working on social emotional learning. We do it at the elementary school, the middle school, the high school. We have a lot of different programs, but having someone, that project manager, who can really help us look at all of the programs that we're doing. What are we doing in our health classes? What's happening in our advisory programs, and connect all of the dots, identify what we're doing really well, and help us look at where our gaps are in our programming, and help us figure out what other services that are out there to help us meet the needs for those gaps would just be amazing for our kids, and it would be a great resource. So I can't speak highly enough about the need for this and the benefits that our kids would receive from having the services.
If you all have questions, we're happy to answer anything.
30% of the respondents said they were dealing with some form of depression.
We have 35%. About 35% of our kids, it's 34.51% of our kids were dealing, and that was 2 years ago. So that was pre-pandemic. I can't imagine what the rates are right now.
Yeah.
Just anecdotally, I can tell you it's extremely high. That, as Tom said, we need to get our kids back to school, and our kids with anxiety, depression, the isolation, the loneliness, the numbers of kids who have been hospitalized. It's tremendous this year.
I remember that survey and some of the responses, the statistics percentage wise. I know it was 2 years ago, but I don't remember how many responded. Do you have a ballpark number of?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. We do it for the whole school. So about 600.
Oh, that many.
And certainly parents can opt their kids out. So if we think about the opt-outs, kids who are absent on that day, we might be looking at closer to 500.
Okay, so
But
that's
yeah.
having that issue with depression.
Yeah, and when we even dig down a little bit deeper, we look at the number of students who have reported an attempt of suicide. We're talking 41 specific students, and those are the ones who have reported. So the 41 students,
Oh, students.
41 individual students that we could have potentially lost to suicide. And those are the students who have reported. Those, I would venture to guess that it's probably higher. And then you think about the kids who aren't coming to school because of that anxiety and the depression. If we factored in them and were able to ask them that question, my guess is it would be higher as well.
So one more question.
Sure.
So did I hear you right when you said that part of the work would be to determine how well the things that you're doing now are working and ways to improve what you're doing now?
Yep.
Would that be with the idea of incorporating those into something that's ongoing without having to have these positions once the funding goes away?
Certainly the goal would be the sustainability, and as much as we would love to have social workers because they're such an asset for our district, we certainly recognize financially the impact that has. So to have somebody who can look at what we're doing and say, hey, that's not really working, as counseling team, as advisory teachers, try this program. This might be better to tap into the needs of your kids. So to really take a good outsider look at our district, because some of the programs that we're doing, we love them. We've been doing them for forever, but they may not necessarily be what our kids need now. So to have somebody take a non-biased look at that and say, hey, this might work better. You'll see better results with this, I think is going to be helpful. And then those programs would then be done by, if it was a change to our advisory program, then our teachers run our advisory program now. So that would be no additional cost for a change in that advisory program.
Yeah, because it'd be a shame to have to drop something because it wasn't fundable.
Right.
The sustainability part of it is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be looking at how can we best incorporate things with the folks that we have now that can meet the needs of the kids.
Thank you.
Could I?
Yes.
I just wanted to respond to that as well. When I first read the grant and received this, I just want to thank Jody and Heidi for working hard on this. Is a lot of money. It's $250,000 a year.
$1 million.
Yes, this is not this is why we have these public hearings and we have these conversations, because my first instinct was the matching component. I thought it had to be dollars. So the first question I asked them is this in kind or is it dollars? The in kind component is really important because the physical space, the electricity, the heat, the hot water, everything gets added to the in kind. So we're not worried about that. What I think that first of all, the timing of this could not be better with COVID.
Yeah.
We applied for this pre-COVID. So the timing of this right now is a godsend for this community. Having said that, I think it's going to be interesting to see once it's up and running, if the director audits the programs and sets up supports for kids. I just want to emotionally prepare people in 4 years to have a conversation about what are we going to do, because this is actually a huge help. So I think it would be important, if we accept this, to have that conversation in year 2, just to check in on how it's going. Because the one thing that I've noticed as an employee of this community and as your employee is that I noticed right away that there are very limited community services for mental health in the Kingston Newton area. And by limited, I mean limited to the schools. You have to go to Exeter, you have to go to Plastow, you have to go somewhere else. And the goal of this is to set up some systems to help some of these people where they can get to it. Because some of these people can't or won't get to Newton get to Plastow or another town to get the help that they need. And I couldn't be more concerned about the fact that these services don't exist in these two communities. So I can't thank the two of you enough, and I hope the board will support this. But I just wanted to reiterate that it's not just $250,000. It's actually $250,000 for 4 years. Annually for 4 years, to be the way Jamie would say it.
Yeah, so the state basically already confirmed verbally with me that they would fund us in year 2, 3, and 4 a minimum of $300,000 because we're losing so much this year.
It's incredible.
Jamie?
So I got a few questions just to make sure I'm getting it. You mentioned, one is you mentioned the suicide stat. I want to make sure I got my notes right. Did you say attempted or thought about?
Attempted. I have the seriously thought about suicide was 19.4%. The numbers are astonishing.
Yeah.
If you have it all in a form.
I remember the discussion, but
Mhm.
Is that from the YRBS?
It is from the YRBS.
You also mentioned, if I got my notes right, to bridge the gap between the family and the students. Is this kind of like family intervention? I'm not quite understanding what you're meaning by that phrase.
The school and the family. So to bridge that gap between supports within the school and the limited supports that the community can offer families right now.
Okay.
I misspoke. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to make sure I was getting it.
Yeah, no, of course.
Are there ancillary costs? Because when I look at you talked about 3 different potential hires. When I load those up, my estimate of what the cost of the hire would be in the benefits, I'm close to the 250. Are there other ancillary costs involved?
So right now, so yes, the bulk of the funding would be to support these positions. So the project manager estimated right now is probably, if they take benefits, around $150,000 of the grant. And then a social worker is estimated at about $86,000 because we budget for a master's +6 position for that. We'd be probably looking for a master's level position, but perhaps not. So those are things that the project manager would really kind of look into to figure out financially how we can get the most out of the grant. That's why we also potentially said a part-time social worker as well, because our thought is maybe we have a full-time that does some school hours and some evening hours, and then maybe we have a part-time that does more evening hours. In addition to that, we can help support whatever professional development or training programs that we have, but it's basically the project manager does an audit of the school district and the community. They make recommendations. They'd be working with Heidi and myself and the various departments and agencies that are funding this grant. And they would determine the next steps and how we're going to utilize that money. That is just how Heidi and I are predicting we would utilize that money right now.
So your prediction would be it would be pretty much be used up through the hires, and then the benefit you get is the talent and skills of the people that you're hiring to help with the situation that we're under.
I think we would have some additional money for funding. So there are some specific professional development that Heidi's been looking into that I believe we'd be able to fund the majority of those because they're not a big expense, as well as potentially training some more individuals within the district to be CPI instructors for crisis prevention within the various schools. We have one trainer per school right now, and we think we'd be able to get some more individuals trained in that area and other areas. I still think that we'll have at least $25,000 to use for professional development.
Okay. And the last item, I'll tag into what Jim was saying. One of the things that we had identified in the finance committee this year for school year 21 that we're in was we were going to do an audit of the special ed group. And given everything that's gone on with COVID and God knows everything else that we've been trying to manage, having got to that, this position would not only help us to do that, it would help us to do it with an outside eye. While our inside folks that are doing their great jobs can continue to focus on doing the great job and just give some extra emphasis to that activity.
So just to be clear, it would audit more the guidance programming than special education. So the guidance programming, maybe the special ed social workers, but this position would not do a fiscal audit of special ed because
Yeah, I
that's a
wasn't
separate
thinking
department.
personal, I was thinking more just interactive.
Academic and social and
And
emotional.
maybe I'm making a connection that's not there, that some of the people that are under mental strain, et cetera, might also be under some of the special education umbrella.
Yeah.
And maybe there's not a intersection there, but my belief would be there probably is some intersection there. So
There is.
They could help us in that sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the special education social worker position that we'll be moving forward with for next year could also be a part of working with the project manager. So they'd be a new position, the project manager would be a new position. So I think they would both bring some great insights.
I actually have a question about that. If you don't mind, it might help us. Could that position be considered one of the in-kind positions because it's a social worker? You probably don't know this yet, but we should explore that.
I mean, potentially that's a possibility we could explore, although the focus of the social worker for the special education department for next year is really to help focus on our behavior programs within the district. Because as part of the audit, I'm also kind of looking at our cognitive programs and our behavior programs in the district and how we can change those and get those so that they're more effective for some of our students. So that person is going to be tied in and working with every behavior program that we have in this district next year. And I just want to put, that's going to be a lot of what they're going to be focused on. So the purpose of this grant is to support all students within the district and the community families. So maybe a portion of it, Tom, but I would certainly say not the entire position.
Okay. Something to think about, right? Just looking for those matches.
I'm sure we all know the answer, but I want to make sure none of these are tenured type positions. So the person being hired would not be, if the grant runs out, they run out unless the school district picks it up.
I can answer that. So the project manager would be through the SAU department. So they don't fall under,
Administrator, right?
Yes.
they would be an SAU administrator. So they don't fall under any of the union agreements.
Social worker.
The social worker position would fall under, however, we would not hire that person until year 2. So their tenure would technically be up in year 4 of the grant, which would be their third year. So we would not be in a position where we had to keep them on a 5th year when the grant runs out if we do not want to.
And even if we did, if the grant expires and the funding goes away, then the position just gets reduced.
Just
So
wanna-
that's, I'm
just
glad you
wanted
brought
to
it
cross
up.
that T,
And I also feel like if we wrote the contracts in a way, this would be a Diana Rooney question, but if we wrote the contracts in a way that they're funded through the grant, I don't think we would be held to that standard.
Great job.
I just wanted to, oops, go ahead.
Thank you.
I just want to say, as a clinical social worker myself, I'm ecstatic for this because I have a lot of parents in the community that have come to me for consultation, and we don't have enough services in the community. And we do have a lot of kids suffering. The YRBS is 2 years ago. The ACEs study, if we look at, these studies today, the numbers would be through the roof. We have so many kids hospitalized on a daily basis.
We do.
That's actually what I was just going to address. We are planning on doing the YRBS again in the fall, is the next time that they'll offer it. So I would imagine that when we get the report from that, it'll probably be next spring. So this time next year, the numbers are going to be, I think, shocking for all of us to think about the struggles that our kids are having. But as Jody said, some of the programs that we'll be able to bring for training are relatively inexpensive. The emotional first aid, so for folks, if they want to look these up, and it's therapeutic crisis intervention is what she was referring to, the crisis de-escalation. If we can bring some training to some of our staff, and then we can train more of our staff. Because right now we train our special ed staff. It would be great if we could train our entire staff in crisis de-escalation skills. It just will help our kids even more.
Are you talking about the psychological first aid?
Yeah, yep. And it's through, I can't remember the name of the agency, but I think it's emotional first aid or mental health first aid.
Okay. They call it something different in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I think, yep, I'm a Massachusetts girl myself. So yeah, but I think up here it's called emotional first aid. And we have had some
that's
of our
really
staff
great.
who've gone through it. It's an 8-hour training. We can break it up, and the staff who've gone through it have come back and said, more people need to take this. This is so helpful. I understand things now. I know why this student's doing what they're doing in my class. I don't need to know all their background. Don't need to know everything that's going on. I now feel like I have the tools to assist this student through the crisis that they're going through, because that's not a big part of teacher training. It needs to be, but it's not. So if we can equip our teachers to be able to better handle those mental health crises, I think what it will do is reduce our numbers for special ed. Going back to your point, Jamie, to really looking at the fiscally, how much money do we spend on special ed? If we can kind of build all those supports in for our kids in that tier 1 for response to intervention, then we're going to be decreasing our costs at the higher levels.
Heidi just covered about 17 things in 2 minutes that I'll be talking to you about a lot more later. Just key phrases: response to intervention, training for staff about how to handle kids with social and emotional issues. And the other really big one is that clinical coordination of support between the community, the home, the parents, the school, and the kid, right? And we'll talk more about Dr. Green and his organization playing a bigger part in our organization later. We just, during the pandemic, I don't think folks are really up for a lot of professional development right now. They're just trying to make sure that they're getting everyone through the curriculum. So we're, I think that everyone wants the professional development, and the sense in the district is that this type of professional development is incredibly effective.
I just wanted to add my appreciation to everybody else's. I am completely supportive of this, and I know more than I'd like to about the difficulties that COVID has wrought on our student population, including college students, which I know we're not talking about, but it's just awful. And I really appreciate your bringing this to us. It's great.
So thank you, because we definitely see the need and we need the help.
Sorry, another question. Offhand, maybe anecdotally, how many crisis calls have you had to the school since you guys have been involved? Like since the school year has started?
Every day.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head, but every day we have parents who are reaching out, looking for referral information, asking how do they navigate the mental health system. We have parents who are sitting in the emergency room with their students waiting for a psychiatric bed for days, weeks. Our kids are hurting, and parents don't, unless you're trained in that world, when you're first thrust into that world, you have no idea how to navigate it. And that's where I think a social worker is able to be the person who can go and hold the hands of the parent while they're holding their child's hand to help navigate that process, because it's pretty scary.
I also want to say thank you. I'm getting teary because I have experience in this, and finding a way to bridge the gap is huge. I know you said there is not a lot around, but there is really not a lot around for youth. Adults, there is much more, but for youth, it is extremely challenging to find help. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to apply for this and doing such an amazing job to get this. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
And before you vote, I would just like to add that both of them have done this. Like I said, when it finally came to me, I got a little nervous about the in-kind match, but I was like, we've got to figure this out. So we worked hard in March. For a minute there, we thought it was going to, not work out. And I was like, we have to figure this out. So I would agree with Dawn that I can't believe what's coming across my desk these last 2 weeks. I'm seeing it. Today was awful. Awful. That's all I'm going to say. Today was awful. And so we need to start this as soon as possible. So could you please approve it? Because I'm getting excited. I want to help my kids.
We have a motion.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
Okay, that Maura second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening.
Really appreciated.
So 7.3.
I told them they can leave. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
You guys can go
Yes.
home. You don't have to stay.
Thank you.
Can I go with him?
No,
Early
What are you
release.
talking
not
about?
allowed. You're gonna want to stay for this one. Tuition
Yep.
rates.
Tuition rates.
Okay, so I calculated the tuition rates for the up and coming year, and what I'm recommending for the school board to adopt is $22,265.64 for elementary school, $16,907.04 for the middle school, $18,223.04 for the high school. Under the policy GFAB, there's also a calculation of at least 110% of the per pupil costs, which are also listed there. And then the Fremont contracted rates is going to be $17,609 for tuition and capital costs of $1,922 for a total of $19,530. If you make a comparison to Fremont tuition rates to the current year, it's only about $300 less expensive. And that's primarily due to the fact that their capital costs are increasing every year from now until the end of the contract because the state aid is decreasing till the end of until the end of the bond payments. Okay. That's it.
Their capital costs are increasing.
Well, I guess if you look at it in that way, the net capital costs are increasing because the state aid decreases.
Okay, but the dollar is the same.
The payment to the bank changes annually, but it's roughly about $2.3 million each and every year. And then, so last year, I think we got $520,000 in state aid. And I think next year we're going to receive about $490,000. And so it's going to decline to about $425,000 in the last year. So the state has an amortization schedule for the state aid. And I know what the revenue is going to be for the next 3 or 4 years.
So the 1922 is sufficient to cover the capital costs
Yes,
allocation.
for their share.
For
of
their
the cap-
share.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, how many people do we have tuitioning in outside of Fremont?
I actually just had that up. Right now we have between, and it depends upon the quarter. So we have between 189 to 192 students. Those are regular day students and 33 special education students
From Fremont.
from Fremont.
How many do we have outside of Fremont? I think is what Jamie.
Oh,
Right.
In
right
addition,
now I don't have any.
So today's zero.
we have very few that pay tuition.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to validate that.
I don't know if this is maybe not related, but we allowed teachers or staff's children to come to school this year. What's happening? I mean, at this point, does it end at the end of this year, or do they have the option to continue to come to Sanborn next year, or
I'll
is
take
this
that.
just?
Yeah. What the board voted on was pretty clear. The board said for the 2021 school year,
Yeah.
staff may bring their children tuition free. We have not revisited that since then.
Mhm.
So at this time, it would expire at the end of this year.
Do they have the option if they wanted to tuition them in?
They could
Is that,
pay.
is that always a thing at any
Yes.
point in time?
Yes.
You can,
Yeah, and I believe the teacher's contract says that they can do it at, don't quote me on this, but it's roughly 50%.
okay,
So they don't pay the full amount, but
Yep.
yeah,
very few people took us up on the offer to have their kids come here this year
okay,
because of the uncertainty
right,
and instability of the whole situation. So it was a wonderful gesture,
yeah,
but it didn't yield the results that we had hoped, which is less people on leave and more people
right,
coming to school with their children, attending our schools on the same schedule that they're on.
right.
We
okay.
should certainly discuss that at, an upcoming meeting in May or June.
Matt, can you explain what the difference between calculated rate and adopted rate are?
All right, so the adopted rate is the rate that was determined last year. And the calculated rate is the rate that I calculated this year. And if you look at the numbers, they're drastically different. Last year, when we pulled the budget together, it also included operating the middle school, the old middle school. And so this year includes moving the middle school to the high school, and then also extra personnel for intervention at the elementary.
So the difference between the middle school is essentially the savings from consolidating
Yes,
to the high school.
yes.
Okay. And the difference between the elementary school
I would say it's the intervention teachers.
intervention teachers?
Yeah.
Okay. So it looks like we're doing great with the middle school and doing pretty well with the high school.
Yes.
But if you compare that elementary school cost to the state average, or even the highest other school in the area, which is Exeter Elementary, we're still substantially above.
What is the amount for Exeter Elementary? I don't-
Exeter Elementary, now this was last year's numbers.
Okay.
$20,195.74.
And how many students do they have?
I'm not sure,
Okay, because the economy of scale decreases dramatically as your number of students
Yeah.
decrease.
but the
Correct.
state average is $17,188.49.
All right, so you need a motion to accept.
Yes, please.
Move to accept?
Second,
More second.
I've just got one more question.
Well, discussion anyway, so.
Yep.
perfect.
So what was Fremont's tuition last year?
It came out, I just did it. It's $19,800.
Okay.
And then you have to add on 50% if it's a special education student.
And we've reduced our costs, so they get to reduce their costs some. Is that the?
$300. Well,
Well,
Not quite.
it's
270.
the capital cost that got them.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen again next year.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment on that? It's really important to note that if we hadn't done the hard work that we've done to lower the cost of the high school education, especially in the first year that I was here and this last year, this cost for Fremont would be way, way more, thousands more per student. So even though they're not going, they only went down by, what was it, $269 from one year to the next, they didn't climb $2,000. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that sometimes it isn't, you don't see it year to year the way that it would be if you hadn't done the things that you've done, right? It's so hard to see that it is unbelievably difficult with declining enrollment to flatten a school district's expenses per pupil. Because as the enrollment decreases, certain costs stay fixed permanently until you get to a point where you close a building. So your heating, electricity, you have to have a principal, a guidance counselor, special ed programs. Those stay the same if you have 400 students versus 300 students. They stay the same almost until you get to 250, because there's a point where you have to tip to get small enough to have it actually reduce. It's not like classroom teachers where you have a classroom with 20 in 5 classrooms, and then all of a sudden you have 5 classrooms with 10, and you can cut 2 teachers and have 3 classrooms. It's not like that when you're looking at the whole building's layout. And you can see that evidence of that happening right in the middle column with the middle school. The middle school's enrollment dropped to the point where we could close a building and we could actually truly consolidate the resources. They went from 6 middle school teams to 2, 3. One went to the elementary school for 6th grade, and 7th and 8th stayed at the middle school. So when you look at the middle school costs, you have to remember too that Matt didn't say this, and I know that he was answering the short version, but 6th grade is now included in the elementary cost. So that's a big part of that money, not the intervention. When you take out the cost of the intervention at 900.
Oh, I see. So that was included in elementary last year too.
Exactly. 6th grade went into the elementary school, but the intervention costs were included too.
Okay.
So the intervention costs were in this year's budget, 2021. So what I'm saying to you is that Bakey School holds almost 400 students today. When Bakey drops to 350 students, your costs for special ed, nursing, guidance, administration doesn't change at all. The cost of the building doesn't change at all. Heat, hot water, electricity. Your specials don't change. Art, music, phys ed, all of those courses, you still need a full-time teacher. It's not until it flips way over that it comes down, which is why it's really important for everyone to recognize that lowering your cost per pupil when you have declining enrollments is very, very hard. I want to celebrate that we've kept it equalized, because normally it goes way up. So the fact that it's not going way up is really impressive. I just need you to hear that you've done really good work. We have all done really good work to balance that component out. If you have a goal of getting our elementary schools to being at $17,000 per student, you are talking about dramatic cuts. You're talking about class sizes of 25 plus. You're talking about cutting art, music, PE, guidance. It's dramatic. If you cut $3,000 per student for 600 students, you're talking millions of dollars. I just want people to understand that, yes, we can lower this and we can equalize it, but there's got to be a point. Right now, next year, the high school will have 575 students in it. It was 680 when I got here, and it was way more than that prior to that.
And it was built for 1,000.
Exactly, which is why we put the middle school here,
Yep.
right? Because remember, putting the middle school here required us to eat up some classrooms for like the middle school office, middle school special ed, things that you wouldn't duplicate in an 1,100 student high school. For an 1,100 student high school, you have one main office, you have a nurse's office, you have your special ed classes. Putting 2 buildings into one ate up a bunch of real estate in the building that you wouldn't eat up if you just had a larger 9 to 12 high school. What I'm talking about is economy of scale. Our economy of scale is a real challenge. And Jim, I agree with you. I feel like that amount at 22,000 is high. I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm not saying that we should our goal should be 17,000.
Right.
I'm just saying we've got room to go yet.
Yeah, and we will.
And we'll work on it.
Right, we'll keep working on it.
Right.
But I also want to celebrate the positives. in here.
Absolutely.
The high school went down by $300, and other places are going up.
Yeah.
Because every place in New Hampshire has declining enrollments. So they're all facing this problem, which is why you'll notice when you look at the data on the DOE website, their costs per pupil aren't going up as fast as they were, but they're also not going down because other places aren't doing these moves that we're doing. I was nervous about the reorganization when we did it, but I just want to say that in hindsight, we made the right move. We did. We made the right move. If we cannot continue to run 5 campuses for 1,600 people, if Fremont leaves, that's a whole other story that we'll discuss later.
Right. Which is another reason to keep working on the cost.
We'll keep working on it.
Yeah.
Pete?
While we're on this, we're on one of my pet peeves. You cannot take a budget, divide it by the number of students. Do we want a school that doesn't have AP calculus?
Right. Those are
Do
the
we want a
questions.
school that doesn't have AP chemistry? And if I have 23 students in my class and I'm teaching 5 classes and I drop down to 18 students in my class, you say, well, gee, that's 5 classes, that's 25 kids, but it's still 18 students in that class. Unless you want to take those 18 students and add them to the 23 I already had to run it up to 28 students per class. And how effective is the teaching there? So when I see people use business, if you will, I make so many widgets and this is the cost, that's my cost per widget. You cannot say that when it comes to academia, because unless you want to say Sanborn's not going to have any AP courses anymore because there's only 5 or 6 students in each class. Yeah, you want to have that reputation, or you want to get that accreditation, fine. But I don't think we want to go there. So there is an intrinsic cost that you cannot calculate in. And when you start saying we have X number of students and X number of budget, therefore the cost of each student is, because I'll tell you right now, to teach an AP student versus, let's say, a regular ed student, because now you've got one teacher for 6 students, right? Versus one teacher for 22 students, your costs are going to be higher for that student.
That's right.
So you got to be very, very careful when you start saying, well, our cost per pupil is. But on the other hand, you've got to really look at it because it does affect tax rates and but please don't just say our cost per pupil is based on our budget and number of students. Unless you want to really kind of get into the muscle of the school.
The numbers that I quoted came from the Department of Ed.
But the
They have a
Department of
whole
Ed doesn't
website.
include a lot of things, remember.
Well, if you want to get down and compare curriculums between schools, I'm giving you, I don't know that there's that many high schools that have no AP classes. I'm giving you averages.
Right. But you've got to look, and you can't compare this school to that school. You've got to look at years of tenure. So I left at a higher rate than the teacher that was hired with 2 years experience, even though we both taught science. So if you've got a school district with a high number of experienced teachers and another school district of low number of experienced teachers, there's too many variables to then just take budget to students.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I just
So
want
we
to
got to
say,
get on. I know that.
got 2
My
attorneys
My
here.
pet project here.
Public first.
And Jamie, I think you had,
Yeah, I want to make a couple of points. So the elementary points that were being made, there's no AP in elementary. So we're comparing an elementary number. I agree with your points, Pete. It's not the same as business, but also business takes a look at doing things differently and more innovatively. And we are very stagnant as school districts in doing that because we treat everything like an aircraft carrier that's trying to turn rather than a PT boat. And so it's much more difficult. But when you're looking at statistics, it's public statistics, it's against schools that also have to meet all those same needs.
Right.
And they're also meeting them. So I kind of agree with both statements. I think there's room to go.
Yeah.
I think we still have to look at it. No, I'm not prepared in a high school area to get rid of AP, but I do think we have to look at it.
So I was just going to say, this is a precursor to our budget conversation.
Right.
Yeah, we can wrap it up
Yes.
at that.
okay, so any other discussion or can we move on to a vote?
Let's vote.
All right, all in favor?
What are you voting for again?
Tuition.
Tuition
To
rate.
to accept the tuition.
Wake up, Jamie.
All right, that was unanimous, Phyllis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, photography services, Matt, is that you?
Okay, yes. So we go out for photography services every 3rd year. And so this is the year, and we received 6 proposals. The 2 lowest cost proposals, and I looked at all the proposals based upon the criteria of cost to the parent, and then also commission back to the district. Okay, and then the level of service that they can provide to the district. Okay, the 2 lowest costs to the parents were Geskis, our current incumbent, and LifeTouch. Okay, LifeTouch was lower than Geskis by roughly $4 to $10 per package. Remember, there's plan A, plan B, plan C, and you get a different kinds of pictures with it. So Geskis came with a 20% commission rate, and LifeTouch is an 8% commission rate. When I spoke to the building principals, They don't really care so much about commission. They care more about the cost to the parent and the ease of service, because sometimes these photography companies are cost more maintenance or overhead for administration to monitor, and they're happy to work with either GuestKiss or LifeTouch. So what I'm going to be doing is recommending LifeTouch to be our 3-year photo service provider. Okay. Any questions?
I have a question. Dawn, what do you think about this? I don't have a senior. You do.
This is for all schools.
All schools.
This is all schools.
Okay, then the other two parents can chime in too.
Hey, I have kids at all the schools too. Come on. No, I mean, honestly, when I was quickly comparing, the one neat thing about what is this one called? The LifeTouch. When you look at the packages, they all come with a Shutterfly download, like a digital download. So that's, I think for a lot of parents, I think that's going to be a big bonus. So, I mean, I think that's definitely worth, and the cost is a little bit less, which is nice, but having that free download to Shutterfly is, I think, a huge bonus to parents.
And just so everyone knows, I really dug deep into LifeTouch's licensing agreements to make sure that when they go into Shutterfly, they're not divulging student names or anything like that. I have torn them apart. So
When he says that, he's not kidding.
yeah.
I would agree. Like, so for GuestKiss, you either pay for the digital download or you pay for like the package. Like,
Yes.
it's like a either or. So I really like that if you buy a package, you get the digital download. The prices as a parent are phenomenal, like significantly lower than what, GuestKiss or Hockmeyer or other ones we've had in the past.
And you don't mind buying them in case your kid has a really bad hair day.
I mean, Shutterfly is a reputable company to begin with. Like, if you're getting pictures, outside, they do cards and announcements and really nice canvases. So I would be in agreement to go with Shutterfly or LifeTouch that is owned by Shutterfly.
Yeah, it's owned by Shutterfly.
We need a motion.
Motion to approve. I'll second it.
Okay. All right, any discussion?
I do have a question.
Yes.
The reason that we went with GuestKiss is because they sort of stepped in after our previous
Yes,
vendor bailed on us during COVID last year. Is that correct?
that's correct.
For graduation,
For
yes.
graduation.
Yes.
We had to
And,
hire a local photographer who was really, really super good.
So I noticed that you said they did provide us with excellent service. GuestKiss did, and I just am curious if you did any, if you reviewed LifeTouch, do you have any reviews on them? Any experiential information?
Yeah, all the building principals you have used LifeTouch in the past, and they're all satisfied with using them as well. I've seen LifeTouch, and of course, with my son, they had LifeTouch, and it was fine.
Okay, thank you.
All right, all in favor of LifeTouch? All right, unanimous.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right, so looks like we are down to second public comment. Okay, so next meeting, the next Sanborn Regional School Board meeting is a joint board meeting with Fremont scheduled for Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Check the SAU 17 website for the Zoom link to be provided at a closer date.
Yes, briefly.
So
And the school board will be meeting here.
yes, the school board will be here Zooming into Fremont.
Okay, and we do have a brief non-public, and then we will have the meeting with our council.
Yes, okay.
So we may come back to public after our non-public.
Okay, so can I have someone motion us into?
I guess that's me being this, am I the senior or because it's my last term, right? I don't know.
I just think you
I'm
read it.
trying to think, well, that's why Larry did it, right?
We should call it one of these.
Yeah, we should. Okay. Madam Chairman, make a motion, we go in non-public session in accordance with RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2A, number 11. You got it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
We have a
Roll
non-public.
call.
Oh, roll call,
Aye.
vote, right. Thank you. Pete,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Maura,
Aye.
Tammy,
Yes.
Yes.
Heather, and myself, yes.